create beautiful command line interfaces with Python. I'm a developer, and you guys all are developers. And we, well, develop software. And a lot of the software that we develop has command line interfaces. And when was the last time you saw a beautiful command line interface? Hi, I'm Vladimir Kelyshev. I do command line interfaces. So, let's take a look at this example. This is a simple command line interface. Just take a look at it for a second. Glance over it. You can immediately see that it's some kind of communication program. So you can do something over TCP and over serial, and you can pass host and port as an arguments to a TCP command, and you can also pass timeout option. In case of serial command, you can pass port and baud rate optionally, and the timeout optionally, and also you would expect to get help from it with dash help and dash dash help, and you also would expect to get a version of the program with dash dash version. I think that's a great example. It is a very readable one. You can immediately see what's happening there. So let's go ahead and try implementing it with Python. So first what we can try is using optparse. Optparse is in Python standard library. What we do, we import optparse, we instantiate option parser, we add a couple of options, and after that we don't have much help from it, because it parses only options. It doesn't parse commands, and it doesn't parse positional arguments. So we need a couple of nested ifs in order to go through and parse commands and positional arguments. Well, okay, maybe we have some other alternative. Let's try argparse. Argparse is in Python standard library since 2.7. Well, this is a much shorter code for the same command line interface. So what we do here, we import argparse, instantiate argparser, and then we add argument version, and then we subparsers equals parser.add subparsers, and parser equal subparsers add subparser TCP, and we add a couple of arguments, and then we again subparsers.add parser serial, and so on and so forth. Well, you would say this is very object-oriented, right? This is looks for me like an object-oriented framework. Yeah, not too bad comparing to option parser. But what we get mostly is, okay, maybe not this, not always this, but the biggest problem that I experienced with both argparse and optparse is that I can never get it right. If I do a one-off script and try to do something quickly, I never can do anything quickly because I don't remember the defaults. I don't remember the names of the methods. I can never remember that. So every time I did a script, and I did a lot of those, I needed to look up documentation and go to a website and see what are the defaults, what are the arguments, because the API of argparse is huge. Just look at it. What it's about 6 classes and about maybe a dozen methods, and some methods have about 10 or 12 arguments. And what we have classes like, okay, argument parser, then raw description help formatter, raw text help formatter, metavar type help formatter. What are they doing there? Namespace, file type, really? Okay. And dozens of methods, and you need to remember the defaults of the arguments of those methods. And what arguments do we have? Epilogue, okay, usage, head help, conflict handler, parents, okay, action, narcs, okay, well, I don't know what's happening there. And what I did for years is just I would go to the Python documentation and I would just copy what works. I mean, isn't that what you do? In case of argparse. So Kenneth Rates, a great hacker and Python Software Foundation member, said that if you have to refer to the documentation every time you use a module, find or build a new module. So that's what happened. Here is implementation of the same command line interface with a library called docopt. You see what's happening here? We import a single function and we pass the usage pattern to this function. In this case, the usage pattern is in docstring. And docopt will parse the usage pattern and implement the whole command line interface for you. And that's what all you need to do. But how can it do that possibly? Just take a look at the usage message that I showed you originally. I didn't need to explain you what's happening there. You all know what's happening there. You know that TCP is a command. You know that things in angular brackets are positional arguments, that square brackets denote optional elements. You know that somehow, magically, and it's quite a formal format. And you know that by heart because it's part of the standard. The usage pattern is a part of the IEEE standard YOO 3.1, also known as POSIX. So this usage pattern format is in the heart of every Unix system, and it's in the heart of every Unix hacker, and you know this format already. So why not just parse it and get our command line interfaces like that? So, and this is the whole API of docopt. It's a single function that takes one required argument and 3 optional arguments. The required argument doc is the help message that's being parsed. argv, you can pass explicitly argument vector if you want to. Help, boolean, by default true, is whether you want to use the default help which you just passed, the help string that you just passed as the first argument. Version, you can pass version in order to get a free -- version of your program. So, and it returns a simple dictionary, not a namespace, not a funny object. It's just a dictionary. And could something be more readable than that? You can immediately see that the first one is an option. You can immediately see that the second one is positional arguments and the third one is a command. It cannot get any more readable than that. Seriously. And then let's take a real life example. This is one function that implements command line interface of PEP8 script. So PEP8 script that we know and love, that we use every day to check style of our Python source code. This is just a single function that implements the command line interface. And here is the same we use in docopt. What I did, I just copied from my terminal the output of the help command of PEP8. Yes? I made just minor modifications and I was able to use it right away. So I will go now in detail about the language, about this domain-specific language. It's a help message that consists of first it consists of an arbitrary text, but it also consists of a usage pattern and options description. The usage pattern you know, and it is standardized as in POSIX, and options description is some additional data that you can use for resolving some ambiguities. So I will describe first the usage pattern. This is example of the usage pattern with a command and an option and an argument and an optional argument and then an option with an argument, and we can have mutually exclusive elements, and we have repeating elements. And so the first kind of elements is positional argument. So every word that is in angular brackets or uppercase is a positional argument. I don't know why I'm telling you, you know that. So this is example of simple usage with 2 positional arguments, host and port. And then options. Options are things that start with dashes, you know that. And this is an example of options that docopt can handle. So all the standard Unixy options that you expect. You can stack several single-letter options like the first 2 lines. You can have equal sign or have a space between long option and its argument. You can have a space between a single letter option and an argument, or you can not have the space. It's up to you. You can stack them in the POSIX fashion as you would like. However, you may think that some of those formats are a bit ambiguous, like a 4th line. You can't really tell whether the input is it a flag or is it an option with an argument. You can say without the equal sign, just looking at this option. But you can resolve these ambiguities in the options description that I will describe in a second. But you're of course encouraged to use non-ambiguous formats, like using an equal sign. And so This is an example of usage with many options, with a couple of single letter options in the very beginning, and then long options with arguments and without arguments, and so forth. Then a command. A command is any word in your usage pattern that doesn't look like an argument and doesn't look like an option. So if it's not in angular brackets, if it's not uppercase, and if it doesn't start with dashes, then it's a command. So this is an example of a usage pattern with many commands, like ship new and ship move and ship should and mine set, mine remove. And you can see that this is a neat command line interface because it has a very nice balance between commands, positional arguments, and options. And I think that's a great usage pattern. And originally I wanted to use this usage pattern as a first example with argparse and optparse, but after an hour I wasn't able to implement this in argparse. I had more than 100 lines of code and it was not working. And I think you just cannot do that in argparse, or it will take hundreds of lines of code. So I gave up and created a simple example, just for the argparse sake. So optional elements. Everything that you put in square brackets is marked as optional. For example, these two usage patterns are equivalent, where you have an optional command, option, and argument. So next, required elements. Every element by default is required. However, you can use parentheses in order to explicitly denote that they are required. This is useful for grouping elements. For example, you can group several mutually exclusive elements, like in the first line, using pipe to denote mutually exclusive elements. Or you can group a couple of elements to denote that a group of elements is optional, but not each of them, like in the second example. Or you can apply operator like ellipses for the group of positional arguments or some other elements. And these kind of things you don't get in any other command line parsing library. For example, the last one, you just cannot get it. The docopt will make sure that the arguments which are passed to your program go in pairs. So there are odd, even, and so forth. So next, pipe or vertical bar, you use it to denote mutually exclusive elements. And then here are some example. In the first line, we group them with parentheses in order to denote that one of them is required. And in the second line, we group them with square brackets in order to denote that none of them are required. And then you can have nested expressions, and you can nest them as deeply as you want to. For example, in the third line, and the third line and the fourth example, they are equivalent. So if you have a lot of mutually exclusive patterns, you just can you can switch into using sub patterns, like in the last example. So next, ellipses, 3 dots. So ellipsis is an operator that says the element to the left could be group of elements, of course, could be repeated one or more times. So for example, in this usage, we have a file that could be the program that takes one or more files. And then in the second sub-pattern, we have an argument, we have a command that takes pairs of files, or pairs of arguments to be precise. And you can apply ellipses to options, arguments, and even commands if you want. Square bracket options, square bracket is a syntax. It's a shortcut. Very often you would like to list your options below and without listing all of the options in your usage pattern. And this way you can use the options shortcut. Alternatively, you can specify synonymous long and short options and put just one of the synonyms in your usage pattern. Double dash. Double dash by convention, actually by the POSIX standard, denotes that after double dash all arguments are interpreted as positional arguments, even though they might look like options. So in order to support this, you just simply put double dash in front of your positional arguments, like that. Or you can even require it. It's just a normal element. Single dash. Single dash is used to denote that a program, by convention, that a program will take input from standard input as opposed to a file. But this is just a convention, and you can put any meaning to dash. For example, in this case, program either takes dash and reads from standard input, or takes some files. But you can put any meaning to the dash you want, and you can play with this as you want. Like you can apply ellipses to a dash. You can do anything. And then option description. Option description is a list of options that you put below your usage pattern in order to resolve some ambiguity, or provide synonymous one-letter and long options, or provide default values for your options with arguments. So every line that starts with a dash is not counting spaces, is an option description. So the second and the third line are good option descriptions, and the third one doesn't start with a dash, so it's a bad example. Next, you can specify synonyms. Just put in a short single letter and the long option together. You can use a comma, and you can use all the conventions I was speaking about. So, and also very often you would like to put an informal description for your options. In this case, you need to put your informal description and with 2 spaces between your options and informal description, in order to avoid ambiguity. For example, in first bad example, a parser could think that more is an argument to the verbose option, so use 2 spaces. Next, you can put square bracket default colon your value closing square bracket in order to denote the default value for your option. And so, this awesome command line application, is it 10,000 lines of code? This library, is it 5,000? It is 380 or so lines of code. It is really tiny, and it is simple. It has no dependencies at all, just pure Python. And it is the most powerful thing I saw for parsing command line. And the power that it provides is coming from the fact that the rules are simple, but there are so many ways to combine those rules and create your powerful command line applications. So it's the power of combining rules. For example, for argparse is about 2,000 lines of code. Okay, just for comparison.
454.
Hmm?
454.
Okay, not counting spaces, not counting empty lines. So if you don't count empty lines, yeah. So empty lines don't count as code. So no, it's MIT license. I put everything in MIT as MIT license because it's the only license I read. So pip install docopt today, and you can get source on github.com/docopt. And we have a Python reference implementation. We have a CoffeeScript port, which you can use also with your JavaScript code. We have a PHP port. We have a fully functioning Ruby port. We have a Lua work in progress port. We have a bash interface, a shell interface written in Python for shells. And then we have a work in progress, a C code generator written in Python. So, and you can get more information on docopt.org. And the last thing, so the question, how do you create beautiful command line interfaces with Python? The answer is simple. Using docopt. By using docopt, it liberates how you think about your command line applications. And you can just implement the command line, the usage patterns that you always wanted to implement. And that's all the beauty of it. Thank you. Yeah, questions? Where is Mike? Do we need it? I don't know. The network doesn't work? Okay.
Okay, I have too many questions, so I'll try to pick them all really fast. When you're generating command line, can you generate hash fish
we were talking about making automatic bash completion. This is something that could be done quite simply, but the problem is that you rarely use it. I mean, I don't even use it for Git. You can do that, and you're welcome to contribute, but it's something that not all people use. Like when I install a command line app, I rarely look for a command for a completion for it. Maybe it's just me, but it's quite possible to do that.
Can you make some switches to anywhere on the file, or switch down to only in the issue specified commands?
Switch?
So if you're on the last one, right? Yeah. Do you have to say where on the file, or can it be anywhere? So
it should be absolutely anywhere. So the options, they could be anywhere. They're not positional arguments, so they could be anywhere. Yes.
Give you any help receiving those options from the user then? You show you how to specify all the one-line options, but then you're running a program and having received that.
You mean you receive it as a dictionary? You receive just a simple dictionary which has -- your options and arguments and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice, but I want to run it backwards. What I want to do is wrap existing programs. So is it possible, how difficult would it be to run it backwards so that I give you a dictionary that might be in the output of a command line, and you produce a command line that is?
No, I think that's just not possible, because a dictionary is just an associative list, so you don't know the structure of usage pattern.
I don't want the exactly the same dictionary, but suppose I give you a command line that produces a dictionary, and then I just give you the dictionary and I say, I'd like a command line that produces that same dictionary.
No, but what you can do, the usual recipe is that you take an existing command line application, you just copy the help message out of it, and it usually just works. There could be some minor things you can adapt. For example, many help messages are just not formal, they don't follow POSIX, they have their own conventions. In this case, you just need to change small things, but generally it just works out of the box.
What sort of things?
I don't think I express myself clearly.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Everyone is welcome to just catch me, and we can together sprint a little bit on converting your existing applications to doc-opt, or take some example application which, for example, can implement command line interface of Git, whatever. We can do that. That's easy. So just catch me. We can talk later. We can sprint on your projects. Yeah. Any more questions?
As it's a reference implementation, we're not using any of the standard library.
I'm not sure that I hear you, but originally we used the standard library behind the back in doc-opt, but we decided to make to do our full implementation just in pure Python. Yeah, it's just a single file, and all implementations are just a single file that you can just drop in your project if you don't want to install it. So, some other questions? There was someone here asking.
I'd just like to say, as a really lazy person, I really appreciate doc-opt.
Yeah, I'm also a lazy person. Yeah.
I was going to ask you how you get the extended help out, but I just feel like you just put that help into the actual.
Yeah, exactly. So, any more questions? Yeah, thank you guys a lot.